What's up, guys? This is Scar Thomas with Coin Mastery TV, TGIF edition, low voice as always. Seems like I get sick once a week these days. But today we're talking about what's going on with Bitcoin, the overall market sentiment. We're in seemingly a very tenuous state, meaning there's obviously a lot of very interesting bull activity, but we are not out of the woods yet, at least as much as I would like to be. Because I think it's really important to remember we had a huge drop with a lot of volume. I mean, this was like a major just pullback. And yes, percentage-wise, it was the same as, or maybe on par with some of the pullbacks that have happened in the past. But realize the amount of money and the amount of media attention, the amount of people involved is very different than it's always been. And I say that just because that's why I'm not being as aggressive as I often have been. When you see a low and you make a power move on being bullish off of the downward volume, like we saw in the big bull runs. And so today what I want to talk about is a little bit about the levels on Bitcoin specifically, go through some altcoins, talk a little bit about some of the market movements that I thought were really interesting and what's kind of unfolding in the market. A few things on the macro side, some regulatory, and then a couple other pieces that I just thought would be interesting. And I'm really trying to stay away from the news that I think doesn't really serve anybody except for clickbait, right? A good example is like what's happening with Coinbase and the bank accounts and credit cards. That may feed into the emotional stuff that people like to read about, but it doesn't actually help you make any money or make better decisions. There's a time and a place, and you guys should go learn about that stuff. Go to Cointelegraph or Twitter, and if you're interested in that. But I'm here to help people make better decisions. And I'm not sure that really makes a difference. So I'm saying that just because that's why I pick the stuff that I do to talk about, just so that we're super clear. Now, with Bitcoin, I'm on the 4-hour right now. And if you're listening on the podcast, this one might be a good one to come back and check out the visuals. If you get a chance, I'm going to do my best to describe what I have. But I've drawn a few more levels in here. And it's getting a little complicated, right? I've got 4 lines on the I should say 5 lines on the chart here. I want to walk through what they all are. What we had before this week was the yellow, the orange, and then the red. And what these represent are previous resistance lines. And what those typically become new support, right? Or, ongoing resistance. So we can ballpark where Bitcoin may in fact have some trouble getting through, and also where it's going to retrace back to. So I'm gonna drill in here. I'm gonna go to the 1 hour, like we talked about. The shorter the time frame, the shorter term the trend. Meaning that if you see a trend unfolding in the 1 hour, it's not going to be good for like a week. Forecasting for where Bitcoin's going in a month. You want to play the time frame based on what your goals are. And you can see that this did exactly what the resistance looked like it was going to do. It bounced off of it, came back down, and now we're seeing a little bit of a pullback. If you zoom back out, you're going to see these bigger support lines. So right down at 9,300, we got one right around 9,000. And then if you really wanted to go back down to maybe between 85 and 88. But this whole zone, I think, right between 85 and 9,000 would be the real major support level, right? Where that is, that needs to hold for the most part. Otherwise, it's not going to be good for the price, at least in the short term. So this would be, if it dropped down to something like, let's say, an 88, right below here, 88 to 85, I think, is a very strong buy zone. And then if it would have a type stop loss. But in the meantime, if you're trying to do any sort of short-term trading, this is where you're going to keep your eye on it, right? This, 90, on Coinbase's Bitcoin, that, GDAX pricing, 9,400, right around 9,000, give or take, depending where you draw that line. That's going to be the big one. I want to take this off of auto for a second so that I can get a little bit more creative about how we draw these. Now, let's say that Bitcoin price goes through 10,200. Now, if you guys were watching, this is exactly what we were talking about yesterday. Bounced off of this. It's going to retrace a little bit as it did. And then if it has the momentum, which hopefully it will through the weekend, it should blast through this line. Right? You're going to see another big thing of resistance. You can watch the order books if you ever want to watch this thing unfold. And as it gets to that, probably around 10,250, you will see some resistance on the order books. And then if it has the momentum, it'll blast through it. And then we're in the next, really into the next big area, right? This whole zone is going to be a whole new ball game. So in the meantime, I'm just watching to see if it retraces. If it doesn't, if it goes all the way back up there, then you watch and see if it retraces. Always remembering to buy the dips as much as possible. Now you can also see a new line on here, which I guess the blue line is relatively new. I drew that in today, but I'm going to go out to the 4 hour. And you can kind of see, let me make this line a different color just so that you guys can see this. I'll make it, let's make it pink. Pink's always fun. Purple, I guess, I don't know. But this line is a much bigger trend line for the bear market, okay? So it goes off of this peak. It goes off of the January 6th peak, which was at 17,000-ish, give or take. And this line is kind of like the line that rules them all. If we break that line, we are very much on our way back into being in a bull run. That is when, if it breaks this on the daily, that's when things get really, really interesting. And so you can see how it crosses this other pretty major resistance level, the resistance level that drove it all down, which is right around 11,000, let's say, let's call it 11,600. Give or take. This is the area to watch. If you are waiting for anything when it comes to Bitcoin price, if you are watching this, if you are wondering what's the big catalyst, what's the big thing, this is going to be the one, because we get through this a lot with like serious confirmation, specifically on the daily. If you really, maybe on the three daily, we get through that, we're in business. And so anything before that number, right, anything in this zone is really going to be about buying the dips, setting your pretty quick stop losses, really watching this 11,600, because I think a lot of people are going to set short orders when they get up there. But this is what the future holds. This is really where the action is going to happen over the next probably week to 2 weeks. And so keep an eye on that. Right? So we're keeping, we're just watching this and pending no huge macro, or whatever you want to call it, extenuating circumstances. We're looking good. The market cap's growing, and overall the news and the sentiment seems to be going in the right direction. Now, let's go to CoinMarketCap. I'm going to switch over to BTC because I don't really care about US dollar amounts. I just care about beating Bitcoin in terms of my investments, along with obviously holding Bitcoin. And so we're scrolling through here, and you're going to start to see a lot of these start to splinter off. And more importantly, excuse me, you're going to start to see products that do really well are starting to be based on real progress and real things happening. It's not just like, oh, it got listed on this exchange, or this person promoted it on their Twitter account, or what. You're going to start to see real things happening where, hey, they developed a new product that has this sort of impact and solves this problem with this particular company. That's really what you're going to see as it gets related into the pricing. One thing I've always been looking at and been investing on is this idea that the top 20 to 30 coins in 2018 will start to split and start to run bigger. Those will start to win bigger than the smaller coins. And I think that will continue to happen because it's just there's the law of nature where if it's already big, it's going to win even bigger. Like the winners win bigger. That's just how markets work. And that's why I've got my eye mostly on these top coins, short of a few that I think are just really interesting to hold. You own like a small bag of a few random coins that could go big. I think one that's really interesting right now, in my opinion, is Omise Go. I own Omise Go. I've owned it for a long time. You can go back one of the first, like the second week I did was doing videos. I was like, all right, I'm going all in on Omise Go, and the next day it went up like 80% or something. And I've been really fascinated with what they do. They've just got a killer team. They're trying to release Plasma on top of their network, which is extremely fast transaction volume, hopefully to create a new sort of banking and settlement layer. So that's one that I'm really excited about in the next couple of weeks, even months, that I would encourage everybody to go check out. Of course, this is not professional advice. There's nothing about this. This is just my opinion. But that is one that I've been keeping my eye on. And I think that they're starting to come out with some news, and they're very under the radar. They're very humble about what they do. That's always a good sign, as long as they're building really good products, which it seems like they are. And that's something that I really like to see, because the market will always find the best products eventually in this type of situation. Marketing can get you on the map, it can get you the momentum, but eventually, as you need to solve problems, over the long term, the products will be a big deal. Now, the other one, 0x, I'm just based on which is beating Bitcoin really well. This is a little bit of an extenuating circumstance. I like 0x. I own 0x, decentralized protocol, but it just got listed on Bittrex, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So this is a little bit of an outlier. So I think that's always a very interesting. We talked about this week. If you're ever looking through CoinMarketCap and you're you see something doing really well, especially on the against Bitcoin, make it a habit. Spend 20 minutes and see if you can go and find out why that is the case. And if you can't find out, that's okay too, but at least you're going through the process, right? Go on their Reddit. That's a great place to go look. Go look on their Telegram. Go look on Twitter. Email the developer. I mean, that's always, that's never a bad idea. But that's always something that you can do to get a good sense. So those are two that I've been fired up about. 0x, just a little bit of a extenuating circumstance, but I do like Omise Go, and I got a few more that I'm keeping an eye on, but nothing conclusive quite yet. Hopefully next week we can chat about that. Now, some interesting news. Tether, our favorite topic, and as many as you know, I'm not totally sold that Tether is as bad as everyone thinks it is. I know that's a very popular opinion, and I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong or that there shouldn't be more information. I don't know. There's something about it. I'm not convinced that it's going to go down, but I could eat my words on that. But more importantly, they are creating a new token set on the Ethereum blockchain. So if you don't know, they release Tether tokens on the Omni protocol layer, which is a layer on top of Bitcoin, right? Counterparty is the same type of thing. Rootstock is kind of like this, but it's more of like a building layer. But either way, they release it. So if you ever looked at the Omni Explorer, that's how you could tell when they were releasing new Tether into the Bitfinex ecosystem, essentially so that people can margin trade more money. Like that's the whole debate. Now, Tether is doing the same thing, but on Ethereum. And so I'll link to this. I'll also link to the Etherscan address, so you guys can go check this out. If you ever want to go check out the Tether Ethereum contract address, you can see in open, like it's all publicly distributed ledger. So you could see them issuing thousands or million, in this case, 146 million new Tether, right, on USD and Euro T, I guess is the word. And so you can keep an eye on this. Historically, this has been a bullish signal for price to go up because people can margin trade. Typically, people like to margin trade long more than they go short, over, like, loosely speaking, in crypto. And the reason why this is important is because this is feeding into Bitfinex. So if you guys don't know what this is, Bitfinex created Bitfinex, which is essentially an Ethereum 20 or ERC20 token exchange like that's built on the same way Bitfinex is. They also did one called EOS Finex, which is going to be interesting if Tether starts to create like EOS tokens or whatever. It just kind of continues to get crazier and crazier. But here's the big deal: if you go to Etfinex, they're going to allow margin trading up to 3.3 leverage. But here's the kicker, and please, someone, if you know more about this than I do, please like hit me up and let me know more about this. I spent a couple hours reading about this and looking into this. As best I can tell, it's a little different from Bitfinex because Bitfinex can margin call you on the traditional, Bitcoin long. This is built on peer-to-peer financing. So Etfinex will, it's kind of like the referee. It'll make sure that everything goes correctly, but it won't actually be the one doing the margin call against you if you go long and the price goes down, or vice versa. It just facilitates the brokerage between the two, and the Tether kind of like acts as a buffer for that to happen, right? So because Etfinex is all built on 0x protocol, it's not a centralized exchange, so to speak, or at least the protocol layer isn't. So you don't have to deposit your ERC20. You can use it in your wallet, but you can also margin trade with that. So that's where the Tether comes in. So I would really encourage you guys to go check this out, because at the end of the day, what this means is that you can margin trade ERC20 tokens, or potentially margin trade. Now, granted, it's only up to 3.3 leverage, but that's still a big deal. Historically, that's been a very, very bullish signal. And so if you go and you look at, they've listed a fair amount of ERC20 tokens, but I believe they're the only one, definitely the only decentralized exchange I've seen that's going to get into margin trading. That gets really interesting. It gets a little complicated, but you may see a big boost in ERC20 token prices, and you also may see a big boost in Ethereum if this goes the way that Bitfinex did. All right, so most important thing is to keep an eye on this, because if you watch this and you see how this unfolds, and then you start to see certain trends happening in the market, you can start to put the dots together. You can make the connections, and then you can forecast on predictions based on what you see the moves that they're making, right? They move to EOS Finex, you see them list an EOS Tether token or whatever it may be. Guess what happens to EOS? You see how I'm saying? History repeats itself pretty quickly when a model works, and there's ways that you can predict it. So this is the kind of stuff that gets really interesting when you can start to peel back the onion a little bit. So go check that out. I'll link all this stuff up so you guys can go investigate yourself and make your own conclusions, as you always should. You should never listen to some YouTuber without doing your own research, in my opinion, at least. Flipping over to the regulator side, I think this is really the story of really the year so far, is the impact of regulators. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about what's going to happen, and when the dust settles, what's crypto really going to look like when the regulators are finished with what they're doing. And I think the thing that's really interesting about regulation, if you look at history, when there's a global issue, and crypto is it impacts all countries, very often countries look at other countries and see what they did and how it worked, how well it worked or how well it didn't work. And I think that's super important. So South Korea, they implemented, KYC regulations, and they just recently started to publish new pricing. You can see with the Kimchi Index, the South Korea price of Bitcoin is looking better, higher premium than on American markets. So it looks like they've been able to implement some level of regulation and still let the crypto trading happen, and the price still does pretty well. So we're seeing this happening, and the reason why I pulled up the Swiss as one of the examples is because Switzerland, I should say, really started as they wanted to be a crypto hub, right? There's a town called Zug, Z-U-G, which is where Tezos was based, and multiple other cryptocurrencies. And what started as a very idealistic idea quickly became a hotly contested regulatory environment. So Swiss, they've been thinking and looking at this for a long time, and they also obviously have a huge history in the banking sector, right? Swiss banks are massive in the international banking community. So as you watch this, and I also I'll link to the primary source, which was a press release about how they're looking at ICOs, how they're looking at tokens, securities, all this sort of thing. But the fact that they're already doing this, it's a smaller country, it's a banking-focused country, they're probably going to move faster than the United States would, and maybe even some of the other countries would, and they're looking at it through the same lens that someone like the United States would. Meaning, this is a really interesting macro thing to look at, because whatever these guys decide to do and the way it impacts the market is probably a good proxy for how it's going to go down in the United States. It's not going to be one-to-one. There's obviously massive differences and complications with size and I get it. But you better believe that the United States government they're going to watch what everyone else does before they implement it. And they're going to talk to these guys. They're going to talk to all the governments, and they're going to say, "Hey, what are you doing? What's working? What should we do?" They're going to get input so that they do it right the first time, because they don't want to mess it up. So this is a really interesting trend. I'll link to this. You guys can go check it out. But keep an eye on what these guys are doing. They are one of the foremost banking countries, and this is going to be a big deal. Last two things. Bittrex, our trusty friend Bittrex. We've been focused on Binance for the most part when it comes to altcoin trading, but Bittrex, they're allowing users back in. Hooray! They're also listing tokens again. I think they're up to 3 in a row. The last 2 was obviously worldwide, Wax and then 0x. We talked yesterday about Wax and how there was an arbitrage, and you could see that's why the price came down a lot, right? The price really worked itself out. At first, it moved itself up, and now it dropped itself down as all the pre-sale people had liquidity. It's typically how it happens. Then you got to decide if it's a good product or not. Same thing with 0x protocol. You can see that it actually didn't really have a huge spike. It had a little bit, as we saw, you get 10, 15, it had about 30% spike when it first listed. A lot of that just comes down to people trying to manipulate the price, get the euphoria going or whatever it may be. But the bigger point here is that Bittrex, for a long time, shut down new user registration, and they were not listing coins. And I don't remember exactly when this was. I want to say it was like October, November. There was an article I pulled up. There's a news where Bittrex, I believe, either partnered with or became an advisor to an options and derivatives trading platform. And more importantly, it kind of gave them the inroads they needed to become a regulated establishment. So, lose a complete speculation. But if that all happened, and now they're listing tokens that were previously considered, or they knew that could not be considered securities, or they had their best guess that they were going to pass the Howey test or fail the Howey test or whatever the word is. ZRX originally, way back, they listed like DNT and ZRX, this is back in the summer. I mean, Q3, Q4, 2017, and then they put the brakes on until they could figure out the securities thing. So the fact that they're listing this stuff now is a very good sign that Bittrex is on board with legal, with regulatory, whatever. They're probably going to continue to keep listing tokens, and there's no way to know what token. I mean, you can't. There's no list that says, hey, this is going to go on Bittrex or whatever it may be. But you can start to do the math. I mean, if you go through the top 100 coins and you look at, you make a list and then you look at all the ones that are not on Bittrex yet, but are trading somewhere else, that can be a good way to think about it. And really what you want is the ones that are not trading anywhere with any liquidity, and they go on Bittrex first. That's really what if you want the big price swings, and you can go through the whole list and and figure that out. So, but this is a good sign. They're a very positive symbol for the market, for regulations, for altcoins, especially if Bittrex just gets into the fiat onboarding business. That's going to be a very big deal because then you can go fiat into altcoin. That's going to change the game. All right, we've been talking about that for a while. Last thing, I thought this was just awesome. Ethereum game developer makes over $500,000 US in one day. So I'll link to this, and you can go check this out. And let's be honest. Some people think that these games are ridiculous. Some people think that this isn't good for the whatever market. It is what it is, and you can have your own opinions. But what I do think the big takeaway of this is that as markets like this get bigger, there become secondary markets, and this is exactly what happened in all the businesses I've been in. It's a big in the app business, big in the Amazon business, big in the SEO website. I mean, everything is that there's a huge amount of money to be made by buying and selling and trading coins. Right? That's probably where I would say that's like the biggest opportunity. But there's all these new things that come up. And that's why you see people building conference businesses. That's why you see people building games, building consulting services, or some people make, trading courses or whatever it may be. But there is going to be an emerging secondary market that will become just as big as the crypto market itself at some point. I mean, not market cap wise, but just like opportunity wise, where you can win in a niche. And so I think that's a really this is just super fascinating. And having built thousands of iPhone apps and mostly games, I can tell you that it's a very good business. Being in the gaming business, combining that with crypto, if you can make a really good, a fun game, it's it can pay off really well, especially if you know how to marketing. So I think that this kind of stuff is super fascinating from a business standpoint. I know many of you out there, you like to capitalize on opportunities. This is the kind of stuff that these are opportunities, and it rewards. Fortune favors the bold, and so you can go and take a shot at it if you know what to do. So go check it out. If you're building one of these, or if you already built one, or you want to build one, and hit me up. I would love to partner with somebody who's done something like this. I think that it'd be a lot of fun. You can just email support@coinmastery.com. I would love to check it out, see what you're up to. But the big thing, these secondary markets, if you can win these, right? It's hard to become the best trader in the world. You're going against the most competitive, most skilled people out there, and buying and holding is a good strategy too. But there's a million opportunities, guys. Like, there's always a way. There's always an opportunity every single time, every day, every week. And this is just one. So with that, we'll rock and roll. We're going to keep watching these prices, keep dominating. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a great day. I will see you later. All right, peace out.